Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you guys about what you need to know before you go out and buy bigger tires. So this here is my 1999 Toyota 4Runner, and these tires are not the factory size. As you can see, they are much taller and also wider. The factory tires are only 31 inches and 10.5 wide. These are about 34 inches, 11.5 wide. And so with that, there's gonna be a lot of issues that come into play. So I wanted to give you guys some of my experiences and also talk to you guys about everything you need to know before you go out and actually buy these big old tires. Now, before you guys go out and buy brand new tires and think that's just gonna fit, well, one thing you have to consider is to make sure that the rim that you have actually is gonna fit in there without interference. So a lot of you guys may be thinking you can just buy a wider and larger tire like this 285 here, or maybe even a 315, which is a 35. But one thing to consider is that it may not actually clear everything in that wheel well. One thing you have to consider is the upper control arm might hit, back in the wheel well, there might be some rubbing, and then also your front bumper. As you can see, my front bumper is very close to that tire. And so if it doesn't work, then what you're gonna have to end up doing is either A, buying new wheels, or you have to buy wheel spacers, which a lot of people end up doing. And that's just extra cost to run these bigger tires. Now, like I said, if you have bigger tires, you're gonna run into some clearance issues. You can see here in the back of my wheel well, I had to do a little bit of work, and I have videos on this, but I had to clear the pinch weld. I had to bang some things back because when this wheel turns, it starts to get pretty close to that back wall there. And if you go even larger than what I have here, let's say you went with a 35 for a Toyota 4Runner, you're actually gonna have to cut some of the metal out and put a new plate in to clear those bigger tires. And I've got estimates for that, and I think it ranges from like $1,200 to $1,500 to do a full tub on both sides of the wheel well. All right, we're down here so I can give you guys a closer look at the upper control arm, and you can see how close it is. It's probably about 3/4 of an inch from hitting it, but you can see what I mean. If you got bigger tires, it's gonna get closer and closer to that upper control arm. And if you don't get custom wheels or the proper offset, then you're gonna have to run spacers or buy new wheels altogether. So in my case here, my 285s fit perfectly in here without wheel spacers. And you can see I have just a little bit of clearance left on that upper control arm. And then right here, as you can see, I had to do a little bit of trimming on my bumper here, just because when this wheel turns inward and flexes, it has a tendency to get close to this bumper here. So I had to trim off a little triangle here so that way it cleared. And you probably can't see it, but my washer reservoir is actually gone in here because when this wheel turns all the way to the left and flexes, it actually gets really close to that reservoir fluid. So I had to go and move that and relocate it to the top of the engine bay. I have another video on that, so you guys can check that out. Now, this one's not so much of an issue on mine, but if you got too big of a tire, you may actually have to clearance your fender here as well. So this little lip here may have to be trimmed off. So if you go a little bit extreme, just be prepared that you may have to cut some of that off. Now, another thing to consider also is on the frame rails right behind the wheel, you may actually rub there as well at full lock. So that's another thing to consider when getting bigger tires. Fortunately for me, mine does not hit that frame rail at all with 285s. I've already tested it, and there's about 1 inch or so of clearance. Now, I know not everybody has money to buy new wheels, and I know some of you guys even buy new wheels and spacers, which doesn't make any sense to me. It makes sense to just buy the proper wheel offset if you're gonna buy new wheels where you don't need to run spacers. Now, if you don't know which wheels to buy or which offset to buy, you can always go and ask a tire shop. Most likely they're gonna have a lot of experience doing this already in the past. They'll tell you exactly what to buy, what backspacing to buy, and they'll get you the best offset where you'll get the least amount of interference. Now, putting big old tires on a factory suspension is probably not wise because you're gonna have a whole bunch of rubbing in a lot of different places, especially for daily driving. Now, I know a lot of people are just mall crawlers like myself, so if you wanna do the least amount of cutting and banging, you actually can just lift the vehicle 3 inches to fit bigger tires. Now, a new lift is not gonna be cheap. You're gonna run probably about $700 for a full lift from the front and the back with the shocks that go with that lift. So just keep that in mind. You can run a cheapo lift, like a spacer lift. It's gonna probably cost you about $400. And once you put on that lift, you have to remember that you will have to get a wheel alignment right after that because all your suspension is gonna change now. And since you're getting new tires anyways, you're probably gonna wanna get it fully aligned. And in my experience, even though you put the lift in, you're still gonna have to do a little bit of work in here to get these things to fit properly. You don't wanna be rubbing in the parking lot and getting embarrassed by plastic rubbing or noise in the wheel well. when you're trying to back out of a parking spot. So the next thing I want to talk about is wear and tear on your vehicle, because these bigger tires are going to come at a cost, especially if you get really big tires and mud terrain tires, which are heavier. So as you can see here, my tires actually stick out a little bit from factory, and that's because of the offset of the TRD Pro rims. And so if you get a really negative offset on your new wheels, or if you get spacers, which will change the offset of your wheels, you're going to be putting a lot more load on your wheel bearings. So that's kind of the trade-off of this wide stance that you're going to have now because of these bigger tires. Just know that your wheel bearings are probably not going to last as long as they did with the factory 31-inch tires, which were a lot lighter and also pushed in more, where they had the proper geometry. And also, since these tires are much bigger and heavier now, the steering rack is going to be working extra hard to turn these wheels. So you may get premature wear on your outer and inner tie rods, or maybe even the steering rack itself. And I've actually seen some people on the trails actually push their steering racks to the limits, where all the Dexron fluid just came out of the steering rack because it was pushing those big old tires. Now, of course, since you have bigger and heavier tires, your braking system is going to be working extra hard now. Now, if you guys didn't know, these Toyota 4Runners already have issues with warping rotors and weak braking system. And so you can see in the back here, I actually have a Tundra brake upgrade, which actually works really well for this tire setup. But you can see that's just another thing you're going to have to upgrade to make sure that you can run these things safely. Let's talk about engine performance really quick, because one thing that you have to consider is when you get these bigger, heavier tires, your engine is going to be working a whole lot harder. And the reason for that is because you have a lot more unsprung weight on those tires now, because they're a lot heavier and a lot bigger and a lot wider. There's going to be more traction as well that the engine has to overcome. And because your tires are much taller now, your gearing and your speedometer are going to be way off compared to factory. And also your transmission is going to be working harder trying to move these tires with the gear set that you currently have. And to be honest, I never saw my transmission light, which means it's overheating, until I put these new tires on. That's why I have an extra transmission cooler now, just so that I can cool my transmission to make sure that light doesn't come on when I go off-roading. Now, there's only two ways to fix the performance issue with the truck now, and that is to either buy a supercharger, which is going to run you about $3,000 brand new, or to re-gear your truck, which can cost about $2,000 if you take it to a shop to put in for you. In my case, I haven't done either of those. I may be considering a supercharger pretty soon here, but if you run a supercharger, now you have to run premium gasoline in your vehicle, so that's something to consider. And speaking of performance, given that this truck is really slow now and it has trouble going uphill even, it basically throws towing out the window. I used to tow my boat all the time with my 4Runner, and nowadays I don't even bother. All right, next thing I want to talk about is gas mileage. You can see here I have a pretty big gas can here. It's actually not for my 4Runner, but a lot of people actually run jerry cans on their rigs. And this is because, one, the range is pretty limited on these 4Runners already. We're probably getting about 220 miles city and a max of 270 highway. When you put these bigger tires on there, you can expect all of that to go down, even if you adjust for the tire size difference. I've noticed that my MPG is now 11 miles per gallon in the city and maybe 15 max on the highway. So you can see these bigger tires are much heavier. They're going to cost more to run. It's going to take a lot more gas to get these tires moving. Another thing to consider when getting bigger tires is the fact that your 4 tires now are not going to be the same size as your spare tire. And with that said, that means you actually have to buy 5 tires, or if you're lucky like me, find this free spare tire that you can use as a spare. Otherwise, you're going to be dishing out another $200 to $300 for another tire. And also, if you have a different size wheel, you're going to have to get a 17 that matches, or if you already have a 16, you probably just use a spare that you have. One other thing to consider about this spare tire is the fact that it's a lot larger now, and it will not fit under the stock tire carrier location anymore. So what that means is you're either going to have to get a custom plate bumper with the tire swing out, which is about $2,000, or you're going to have to figure out a way to take this with you when you're on the trail. So that could be either in the back of the cargo area, which I see a lot of people do, or on the roof rack, which means you have to buy a roof rack capable of carrying the weight of this tire. Now, if you guys are wondering, the biggest size tire that's going to fit down here without hitting that track bar is a 32-inch tire. So that's either 265/75/16 or 265/70/17. All right guys, next thing you got to consider is the fact that your factory bottle jack is not going to be tall enough now to lift your vehicle in the event that you do need to change a tire. So what a lot of people do is they actually go and purchase one of these high lifts. That way they can lift the truck high enough to change their tire. Now the problem with this high lift is the fact that you won't have a lot of locations where you can actually jack up the vehicle using the high lift arm. Really the only place you can use this on is in the rear. If you have a hitch carrier, you can put it in the hitch and you can lift it up to change your rear tire. But if you have a front tire problem, then you're pretty much out of luck. Now in my case, I have an ARB bumper and it has 2 slots where I can actually lift the vehicle up, but that ARB bumper is about $900 and you probably don't want to spend $900 just to be able to use this high lift. Now, I know not everybody can afford a front bumper or a high lift for that matter. What you can do is you can carry a couple of 2x4s, maybe sandwich them together and screw them together, and that'll actually give you an extra 3 inches of travel, so that way you can lift your vehicle all the way up and change your front tire. Now, one other thing to consider about these big old tires is most likely you're going to be airing them down when you go off-roading, because that's why you bought these tires, hopefully. And what that means is, since these tires are much bigger and beefier, it's going to take a much stronger air compressor to air them back up once you've aired them down. And a lot of guys run the ARB twin compressor or the single compressor, or you can buy like a Viair that can support up to 35-inch tires. Now, I don't want to make this video come off as like a huge negative for buying bigger tires, because there are a few pros to getting bigger tires, and I may as well mention them. There aren't very many, but there are definitely some. And one advantage is bigger tires are going to get you to more places off-road. So if you guys are doing like rock crawling or going in the snow a lot, that extra clearance is definitely going to be helping. And that's why I call it miles per gallon instead of miles per gallon, because really, for me anyways, the point of having these bigger tires is so that I can enjoy the vehicle more and go to more places. And let's be honest guys, when you guys roll up to another stock 4Runner or whatever vehicle you end up having, your truck looks pretty badass compared to theirs on their little itty bitty highway tires. So go ahead and just buy those bigger tires, so that way when you guys are sitting around the campfire, you guys can make fun of people still running stock tire sizes. Well guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you guys hit that like button down below. It really helps my channel out a lot and motivates me to make more videos for you guys. And let me know down in the comments below if you guys are one of those guys that makes fun of people that have smaller tires, or let me know if you guys are planning on upgrading tires and what size you're going to upgrade to. If you guys have any questions about anything I talked about here, make sure you guys check out some of my other videos, because I actually go through some of those mods and upgrades that I had to do to make these 34s fit on my Toyota 4Runner. So make sure you guys check those videos out. If you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comments below as well. As always guys, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys out in the trails.